All right, so now we're going to cover the midpoint formula. Remember, the midpoint is the point that bisects any segment, ray, or line into two congruent parts. Congruent means they're the same length, the same distance, the same size. It's pretty simple. You're going to take the x coordinates, add them together, divide by 2. Then you're going to take the y's, add them together, and divide by 2. The biggest difference between the distance formula and the midpoint formula is that with the distance formula, you got a value, and with the midpoint formula, your answer is a coordinate. So for the midpoint formula, you're going to have an x and a y value for your answer. Here's the formal definition. It's saying the midpoint of MAB with endpoints A and B is found by taking the average of the y's, the average of the x's. So we would say x1, y1, x2, y2. We would -8 plus -2. And then we would say 3 plus 7. Both of those we would have to divide by 2. So -10 divided by 2 and +10 divided by 2. -8 plus -2 is -10, and 3 plus 7 is 10. So my answer, when I simplify that fraction, would be -5, 5. And if I look at my drawing, +5 is about right there, -5 is about right there. That point is the midpoint. That blue point is the midpoint. Now, on the Desmos calculator, we had a shortcut for distance formula, and sure enough, there's a shortcut for the midpoint formula. Right there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to type the word midpoint, and then I'm going to type in my points, and then I'm going to click label, and then the actual point will come up. Let's do this for the problem that we have right here. So just like with the distance formula, you got to have all of your parentheses and your commas in the right places for it to work. 7, and there we go, -5, 5. Okay, the commas and the parentheses are pretty much in the same spot. You got to spell midpoint correctly. If you don't spell correctly, then you might have problems using the shortcut. So 8, 9 is my first endpoint, and my other endpoint is -6, -3, 1, 3 is my midpoint. All right, example 5, same thing. Example 5 is actually, I think, the numbers that I actually had there to start out with. I got too close to that x. 0, -6, and another parenthesis. So -4, 1, 0, -6. My midpoint is -2, -2.5. Okay? All right, so you have the problems where they give you 2 endpoints, and then they ask you for the midpoint. The other kinds of problems you're going to have is you're going to have a problem like number 6. Number 6 says M is the midpoint of XY. X has coordinates 2, 7, and M has coordinates 6, 1. Find the coordinates of Y. So in this problem, it gives you the endpoint and it gives you the midpoint, but it wants you to find the other endpoint. This is not complicated. The easiest way to do it is to get some graph paper. You're going to plot the endpoint. You're going to plot your midpoint. And then I want you to actually label them. I want you to write the word endpoint. I want you to write the word midpoint. You're going to find the slope from the endpoint to the midpoint. All right? Then we're going to take that slope and we're going to move from the midpoint to the other end point. All right? If you don't have graph paper, when you come to class, I'll give you some graph paper. You're just going to need a little bit of graph paper for geometry, but this is one of those cases where it's really helpful to use that graph paper. All right, so let's see how this is done. Example 6. My endpoint is at 2, 7. My midpoint is at 6, 1. So now, I graphed my endpoint, I labeled it. I graphed my midpoint, I labeled it. Now I'm going to find the slope. I'm going to go down, then I'm going to go over. All right, I need to count how many I went down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I went down 6 and I went over 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm going to go from my midpoint, I'm going to go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to go over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That coordinate, that point where I landed, that is my other end point. Now, a lot of you will put down the answer 6, 4, or you'll put down 4, 6. That's not the correct answer. You got to start back at the origin and label that point like you would any other point. All right? Sometimes you guys just get to working too fast and you forget to actually go back and count like you're supposed to. So, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my other endpoint would be 10, negative 5. All right. Last example, example 7. My endpoint is negative 2, 8. My midpoint is 5, negative 8. So, I'm going to go down. And then I'm going to go over. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I went down 16, and now I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I went 7. All right. 16 down. If I am at point 5, negative 8, okay, 5 is my x value, negative 8 is my y value. 5, the x, is my back and forth, or my left and right. Negative 8, my y, is my up and down, okay? So if I'm at negative 8, 5, negative 8, and I want to go down 16, then I'm going to go down 16 starting at negative 8. So how many more down will I go? Well, it would be negative 8, negative 9, negative 10, negative 11, so forth and so on until I got to what? Well, negative 8. Let's count. Actually, let's not. Well, here it goes. Sorry, my calculator didn't want to work for a minute. So I'm at negative 8, and I'm going to count down 16. I'm going to end up at negative 24. Do you see that? Negative 8, the negative sign, I'm counting down, so I'm going to subtract 16 because that's how many down I have to go. So let me change my color here. I think I had it to pink. So that was negative 24. And now, if I'm at 5 and I'm going to go over 7, well, I'm going to keep moving how many over? 7. So that would be 5 plus 7, and I'm going to get 12. So my new coordinate there would be 12, negative 24. Now, if you have the big pieces of graph paper, you can just keep graphing and counting. But if you don't actually have a graph paper that's big enough, then you've got to think, okay, if I'm at 5, negative 8, and I move down 16, that puts me at a negative 24. And then when I move over 7, that's going to put me at a positive 12. So your new coordinate is 12, negative 24.